In the cavernous expanse of the Grand Hall of the Galactic Council, a low, planetary hum of 1,000 discordant voices resonated through the air, thick with the scent of ozone and exotic perfumes. Beings of impossible morphology filled the rising terraces, tentacled silhouettes, creatures of crystalline light, entities whose forms shifted like liquid mercury, all representatives of 1,000 worlds bound by a millennium of stagnant peace. At the central dais, a figure of profound antiquity stood as a silent monolith amidst the din-high Elder Vox. His four, time-clouded eyes slowly scanning the assembly, waited. His blue, deeply fissured skin told of centuries bearing the weight of cosmic insight, and when he finally raised a gnarled hand, the silence that fell was not out of respect, but from a species-deep instinct that some primordial truth was about to be uttered. Like, subscribe, and share this story if you dare to witness the moment humanity entered a galaxy that was not ready for us. Comment below with your prediction. Will the Council heed the warning? I come before this assembly not with celebration, but with a clarion call from the void. Vox's voice emerged, a seismic rumble that belied his frail form. A new species has pierced the celestial veil. They call themselves humans. A wave of derisive clicks, chitters, and laughter cascaded through the chamber. From the front row, Grand Counselor Mira unfurled herself, a vision of elegant supremacy with skin like polished argent, catching the hall's light and reflecting it back as cold defiance. "High Elder," she intoned, her voice sweet as toxic nectar. "We revere your legacy, but must we dignify the clatter of infants knocking at the gates? Their vessels are primitive shells, their weapons pathetic sparks. They have barely tasted the vacuum beyond their own moon. Why should their mewling concern the architects of galactic order?" Vox did not flinch. With a deliberate tap on his wrist control, the space above the dais dissolved into a holographic tableau. A gem of blue and green, swirled with white, hung in the black earth. "Observe," he commanded. 1 century passed. They traversed their world on the backs of beasts and the whims of the wind. 5 decades ago, they split the heart of the atom, harvesting the fury of creation itself. 2 decades gone, they wove a planetary nervous system of light and data. Today, their footprints are etched permanently into the dust of their moon, and their gaze, their hungry, relentless gaze, is fixed upon the red plains of their neighbor. He let the image burn into their retinas. Their velocity is not merely notable, it is terrifying. Counselor Drav, a mountain of muscle and tusked indignation, snorted. Many species experience rapid adolescence. What singularity does this humanity possess? It is not the speed of their stride, Vox countered, his eyes narrowing to luminous slits. It is the nature of their soul. They are entropy given purpose. They do not merely adapt to challenge. They consume it, metabolize setback into strength, and emerge not merely unchanged, but remade. Another tap. The hologram became a violent tapestry. Human history in a screaming montage of empires rising and falling in fire, of plagues and pyramids, of trenches and triumphs, of rockets rising from ashes. They possess a terrifying, sublime persistence. An obstacle is not a boundary. It is a test. When barred from going around, they develop a fanatical, ingenious will to go through. When knocked down, they do not yield. They incorporate the lesson of the blow into the bone of their next stand. Mira's laughter was a silver bell of contempt. "You describe the tantrums of children, Elder. Their world is a fractured puzzle of squabbling tribes. They war amongst themselves over plots of dirt and shallow ideologies. How could such chaos ever threaten the harmony of 300 unified species?" The ancient elder's gaze grew distant, peering into a grave past. "I did not say they threaten us today. I counsel vigilance. The last species to exhibit such fluid ferocity were the Creven." A profound, icy hush swallowed the chamber. The Creven were a ghost in the galactic machine, a name expunged from polite history. Their empire had flashed across the stars with brilliant, aggressive fury, challenging the Council's primacy 300 years prior. They were not conquered, they were annihilated, made an example of in a campaign that still whispered in the nightmares of historians. The Creven were predators by biological imperative. Mira dismissed, though a flicker in her eyes betrayed unease. The Creven were predictable, Vox corrected, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried to the highest tier. Humans are not. They value peace when it serves survival. They embrace war when it ensures existence. They are pragmatists of existential calculus. That is what makes them fundamentally dangerous. They possess no fixed nature, only a boundless capacity to become what circumstance demands. They are the ultimate contingency. He could feel the moment slipping away, the Council's collective mind retreating into the comfortable armor of its own superiority. They were monuments, and monuments fear the earthquake more than the avalanche. I ask only this, Vox implored, a final, desperate gambit. Establish boundaries now. Make contact from a position of undeniable strength. Impose rules before they learn the most profound and liberating truth of all. That in the deep dark, there are no rules. Mira's smile was a diplomat's masterpiece, beautiful and utterly empty. Your passion is noted, High Elder. The Council will consider your advice. The translation was clear. You are dismissed as Vox turned, a living relic shuffling toward the exit. His aide, tall, materialized at his elbow, their fronds vibrating with anxiety. They are blind, Tall whispered, the scent of ozone clinging to him. They have been blind for 1,000 years, Vox murmured, the weight of epochs in his voice. Our duty is done. Now we prepare. Far from the glittering heart of the Council, in the silent, aching emptiness between stars, the Earth exploration vessel Pioneer cut through the void. On its bridge, Captain James Reed stood before the main viewport, a man carved from the solitude of space. At 45, his youth for a command was belied by eyes that had witnessed the birth of stars and the silent screams of decompression drills. His was a face the void had whispered to, etching lines of quiet intensity. Report, he said. His voice the only solid thing in the vastness. Doctor. Anna Lane, her fingers dancing a silent sonata across her console, shook her head. Nothing, Captain. Sensor sweep shows persistent null. Just the cosmic background hum and our own existential dread. A ghost of a smile touched her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes, which were sharp with frustrated curiosity. Reed's gaze remained locked on the star-dusted black. It's here. I can feel it. The statement hung, uncharacteristic and electric, from the tactical station. Commander Mike Foster, Reed's anchor of grounded skepticism, looked up. Since when do we command by gut feeling, Captain? Earth Command is breathing down our neck. They want deliverables, not poetry about empty space. 20 years out here teaches you that the gut is just the brain processing data too subtle for the sensors. Reed replied, not turning. They'll get their results, Mike. One way or another. The bridge settled into a tense quiet, the kind felt before a storm. Humanity's reach had been ambitious but agonizingly slow. A child stretching tiptoe to touch a bottom shelf. The Pioneer, with its bleeding-edge cascade drive, was that child's sudden growth spurt, a leap that still felt agonizingly incremental against the galactic scale. Then, a sharp, crystalline chime shattered the silence. Lane's breath hitched. Long-range contact. Bearing 027. Small. Metallic. Non-natural. Her words, clinical, sent a jolt through the bridge crew. On screen, Reed commanded, his heart a sudden drum in the quiet. The viewport shimmered, refocusing. There, hanging in the obsidian, was an artifact of elegant, alien geometry. A central hub, like a metallic seed, sprouted slender arms holding wide, gossamer panels that drank in the faint starlight. It was silent. It was still. It was utterly, incontrovertibly other. What in God's name? Foster breathed, stepping closer. Not one of ours, Lane confirmed, her voice trembling with controlled exhilaration. The material composition, the energy signature, it's alien. The word echoed in the hushed bridge. Alien, the dream and dread of generations, hanging a few hours away. Reed felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control trace its way down his spine. Distance. 6 hours at current velocity. Reed didn't hesitate. He had come to find a signpost in the wilderness. Now he held a map written in an unknown tongue. Set intercept course. All hands to first contact protocols. Let's go introduce ourselves. The 6-hour approach was a silent vigil. When the Pioneer finally drifted like a curious whale beside the structure, its true nature became clearer. An automated sentinel, a lonely lighthouse in an ocean with no ships, no life signs, no active transmissions, just a patient, endless watch. It's a monitor, Lane theorized, her scientist's mind racing. Or a beacon, possibly a boundary marker. Can we bring it aboard? Reed asked, the question hanging between courage and folly. Foster reacted immediately. Captain, we have no idea what it does, who left it, or if it's armed. Protocol dictates observation and report. Reed's eyes remained fixed on the alien artifact. Protocol was written for empty space, Commander. This changes the library. This is the mission. First contact. We study it, we learn its language. He turned, his decision final. Secure it in the main cargo bay. Full quarantine protocols. Suit up. The operation was a ballet of cautious precision. Magnetograpples gently cradled the alien structure, drawing it into the Pioneer's belly. In the glaring lights of the cargo bay, it looked smaller, more fragile, yet infinitely more significant. Reed watched from the observation deck as Lane and her team, encased in environmental suits, approached the artifact. This was the precipice. The moment before the first word of a new story. "What's the play, Captain?" Foster asked quietly, standing beside him. "A welcome mat or a warning sign?" "Maybe both," Reed mused. "A welcome sign with a small print, 'Proceed at your own risk.'" Before Foster could retort, Lane's voice, tight with awe, crackled over the comms. "Captain, you need to see this. We've located a primary interface. And it's reacting to our proximity. Activating." On the artifact, a band of crystalline nodes flared to life, emitting a soft, pulsating cerulean glow. A low harmonic thrum filled the bay, vibrating through the deck plates. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. "On my way," Reed said, already moving. He couldn't know. None of them could. That as Lane's team triggered the device, a ripple in the quantum foam spread outwards at speeds that mocked light. A single, modified pulse, amplified by human curiosity, shot through the galactic medium like a shout in a cathedral. A shout that would soon reach the ears of the Galactic Council. And by the time it did, the luxury of Elder Vox's warning would be a ghost, laughing in the stellar wind. On the dim, mineral-rich edge of Council space, the administrative outpost of Trell 9 hung in its monotonous orbit like a forgotten tool on a dusty workbench. Its commander, Administrator Ben, paced the worn floor of his office, a caged creature of ambition in a cage of his own making. Before him on the data screen glowed the spectral heart of a mystery, a signal pattern, plucked from the void 3 days prior. It was a repeating, structured pulse, a digital heartbeat emanating from the uncharted abyss. It was not a council signature. It was something new. "You are obligated to report this," stated his assistant, Leah, her verdant skin pale under the harsh office lumens. "Strange signals are flagged. That is the protocol." Ben dragged a hand through his steel-wool hair. "Protocol, procedure, paperwork. That's all you see, Leah. Those pulses. They're a language we don't speak. If I report it, the central bureaucracy will bury it in committees for cycles. Some pampered evaluator from the core worlds, who's never felt the true silence of the frontier, will tell us it's stellar static and close the file. And if you do not report it? Leah challenged, her arms crossed like a barred gate. A spark, long dormant, flickered in Ben's eyes. Then we investigate. My personal scout ship is fast. We follow the breadcrumbs, see what's laying them. If it's nothing, we lose a few days. If it's something... He allowed himself a grin, the expression strange on his usually weary face. Perhaps we write our own promotions, or our own obituaries. Leah shot back, but the protest was weaker. The decades of grinding routine on this rock had worn her down too. The office door hissed open, admitting Trell, the hulking, chitinous security chief. "Administrator," he rasped, his voice like grating stone. "Long-range sensors. An inbound vessel. Unknown configuration. Origin correlates with the signal source. ETA? 6 hours." Ben's heart hammered against his ribs. "Visitors. Prepare a reception detail in Docking Bay Alpha," he ordered, authority straightening his spine. "Standard welcome protocols. And Trell, keep this contained. No wide-channel announcements." As Trell nodded and retreated, Leah stared at Ben, aghast. "You intend to greet them? Without council sanction? This is a breach of 100 directives." "I am the senior diplomatic authority in this sector," Ben said, turning to the observation window, where the stars bled together into a river of light. "I am welcoming visitors to my station. That is my prerogative." He did not look back at her. He was already out there, in the dark, racing toward the mystery point. 6 hours later, the Pioneer, a sleek predator of human design, slid into the designated approach vector for Trell 9. On its bridge, Reed absorbed the sight of the alien station. A sprawling, asymmetrical collection of modules and docking spines, lit up like a mechanical constellation. Ships of bizarre and varied shapes flitted around it like strange fish around a deep-sea thermal vent. "Multiple life signs," Lane reported, her voice hushed. "Hundreds. Diverse physiological readings. The station's atmospheric and gravitational specs are within our tolerances. They've transmitted docking coordinates and clearance," Foster noted, skepticism deepening the lines on his face. "They're expecting us." "How?" "The beacon," Lane said. "Our activation must have been a doorbell. We rang it." Reed felt the weight of the moment settle on his shoulders, heavy and cold. "So they know we're coming, but we're walking in blind. Not an ideal negotiation position." He opened the ship-wide channel, his voice calm, a rock in a rushing stream. "All hands, this is the captain. We are moments from first contact with a confirmed extraterrestrial civilization. Remember your training. You are not just crew. You are the ambassadors of Earth, of humanity. Composure, curiosity, courage." The airlock cycle felt like a lifetime. With a final hiss of equalizing pressure, the door slid open. On the other side, standing in the polished corridor of Trell 9, was a tableau of alien life. The leader was humanoid, bipedal, but the resemblance ended there. His skin was the color of cooled ash. His head large, dominated by two vast, obsidian oval eyes that held galaxies of unreadable thought. Behind him stood a female with the green skin of forest moss, and a hulking security officer of a species that seemed carved from granite and purpose. Reed stepped forward, his hands open and empty at his sides. "I am Captain James Reed of the Earth vessel Pioneer. We come in peace and with a desire for friendship." The gray-skinned alien tilted his head, auditory organs twitching. He spoke, the sounds a complex series of clicks and modulated tones. The universal translator at Reed's collar hummed, processing, and after a heartbeat, a slightly delayed, digitally flat voice spoke in his ear. "Welcome to Trell 9. I am Administrator Ben. This is my assistant, Leah, and Security Chief Trell." The wave of relief was so potent it was almost dizzying. They could communicate. Thank you for your welcome, Administrator. We are explorers from the planet Earth. You activated one of our perimeter beacons, Ben stated, his translated voice carrying a curious lilt. It wasn't an accusation, merely a fact. We found it adrift. We meant no intrusion, Reed replied, choosing his words like stepping stones. No intrusion was registered, Ben assured, gesturing for them to follow. But you should understand, you have crossed into council-administered space. As they walked, Reed and his team fought to maintain diplomatic composure. The station was a living gallery of xenobiology. Beings drifted through the air on membranous wings, others scuttled on multiple limbs, still others seemed to be contained fields of shimmering energy, their forms hinting at solidity only at the core. The air was a symphony of strange scents and unidentifiable sounds. Ben led them to a conference room with an oval table carved from a single iridescent stone. As they sat, wall screens illuminated, displaying star charts. The Galactic Council, Ben explained, is a union of 300 species across thousands of worlds. A millennium of shared law, shared protection, shared stability. Reed exchanged a glance with his team. The scale was humbling. Humanity hadn't just found neighbors. They'd stumbled into a metropolitan capital during their first walk down a country road. We had no way of knowing. Our interstellar capability is nascent. Of course, Ben waved a dismissive, long-fingered hand. But now a decision point. Officially, I am compelled to report this contact to the Council immediately. A first contact protocol would be initiated. Officially. Foster picked up on the word. A smile, strange on the alien face, touched Ben's lips. I have been administrator here for 20 cycles, Commander. The core worlds are far away. Out here on the frontier, we learn that some protocols benefit from flexibility. Leah's frown deepened, but she held her tongue. What are you proposing? Reed asked, his instincts humming. An unofficial exchange, Ben said, leaning forward, his large eyes intent. You share with us samples of your technology, your scientific principles, your history. We reciprocate with knowledge of the galaxy, its major powers, its technologies. We learn from each other before the Council's bureaucratic machinery engages and complicates matters. Complicates how? Lane asked. The Council's evaluation process is exhaustive. Can take years, decades even, before full diplomatic relations are established. During that time, interaction is severely limited, monitored. Ben paused, his gaze shifting between them. But if we agree to this exchange, we both gain. You acquire a galactic primer. We acquire an understanding of your unique cognitive pathways. Unique. Dr. Miller, the medical officer, finally spoke. Ben's nod was slow, deliberate. The modifications your team made to our beacon, crude by our material standards, yet brilliant in their simplicity. You solved a harmonic calibration problem our engineers have debated for years. You did not see the tool as sacred. You saw the problem as a puzzle. That perspective is a currency here. Prife, fierce and warm, surged in Reed's chest. Humanity had a seat at this vast table after all, not as supplicants, but as problem solvers. A limited exchange, Reed agreed. Non-sensitive information only, a foundation for trust. Ben clasped his hands together. Excellent. In the opulent, echoing silence of Grand Counselor Mira's private chambers on the Council homeworld, Elder Vox stood like a shadow from a less complacent age. A perimeter beacon in Sector 47 has been activated and modified. The humans have reached our frontier. Mira did not look up from the shimmering data slate on her desk. A single beacon among millions, Elder. Hardly a crisis. The modification increased its transmission range tenfold. Vox pressed, his voice a dry rustle. They did not merely find it. They improved it. That gave her pause. She set the slate down. Ingenuity is not a threat. The centennial gathering is in 3 cycles. I do not have time for primitive newcomers playing with their first toys. You should make time, Vox warned, his 4 eyes blinking in slow sequence. The beacon is near Trell 9. Administrator Ben is stationed there. A light, derisive laugh escaped Mira.
Ben.
That nostalgic fool. Marooned on his mining rock? What possible consequence could come from him? That is what troubles me, Counselor, Vox said, turning to leave. We do not know, and in all my years, the unknown has rarely been benign. As the chamber door sealed behind him, Vox felt the cold certainty of impending storm. The gears of fate had begun to turn, meshing the ancient with the new, and no one was watching the machine. 6 cycles passed in a blur of accelerated history. What began in a conference room on Trell 9 blossomed into a quiet revolution. Human ships, with their distinctive asymmetrical designs, became familiar sights at 17 outpost worlds in the outer territories. Trade flourished, human nanotechnology for Krellian crystalline data storage, Earth's sophisticated composite materials for Valari nutrient synthesizers. But it was the cultural exchange that seeped into the cracks of galactic society. Admiral James Reed, the promotion was swift and unanimous, now occupied an office on Trell 9 that served as the unofficial embassy of Earth. He scanned a data tablet, a smile touching his lips. The Valari have incorporated Bach's Cello Suite No. 1 into their dawn meditation ritual? Commander Foster, now his chief of staff, nodded. They find the mathematical harmony spiritually resonant. Our entertainment broadcasts are now accessed on 23 Council worlds, despite murmured objections. Reed leaned back, staring at the star map on his wall, now dotted with friendly markers. 6 months ago, we wondered if we were alone. Now aliens are using our music to speak to their gods. His smile faded. And the Council's official stance? Still one of dismissive tolerance. They view us as a novelty, a temporary fascination on the frontier that will fade. Good, Reed said, standing to gaze at the docking traffic through his window, a tapestry of human and alien engineering. It gives us time. Time for what, exactly? Foster's concern was palpable. EarthGov is ecstatic about the trade surplus, but some factions are nervous. We're moving at light speed through a minefield we didn't map. Reed's reflection in the transparent steel was grim. We've learned the galaxy is more dangerous than we dreamed. Mike, the history Ben shared, the Council isn't just old. It's sclerotic. 300 species, all using the same derivative tech, thinking the same sanctioned thoughts. They haven't had a paradigm-shifting innovation in over a century. He turned. We've had 3 just from reverse engineering that beacon. Not because we're geniuses, but because we're unburdened. We see a wall and immediately start looking for loose bricks, for tunnels, for ways to build a ladder from scrap. They see a wall and accept it as the boundary of the world. Foster absorbed this. So what's the end game? What are we building towards? Survival, Reed stated, the word absolute. The Council's curiosity will curdle into fear. It's inevitable. When they see us not as cute innovators but as unpredictable variables, they will act. We must be ready, not to conquer, but to endure. On the pastoral world of Valari, in a room fragrant with sacred herbs, young Trin's world was expanding at the speed of light. On his viewer played a human artifact called a film, The Martian. He watched, breath held, as a stranded human used sheer, stubborn intellect to defy a dead world. The climax neared, a desperate, improvised launch against impossible odds. Trin, the evening meal converges. His mother's call floated up the stairwell. A moment, he called back, unmoving. The door whispered open. His father stood there, his broad face a mask of gentle disapproval. The human fictions again? The community elders have cautioned us. They call it unfiltered cultural diffusion. Trin finally tore his eyes away, but they blazed with a fire his father had never seen. They're not fictions, father. They're testaments. The humans don't accept impossible. They see it as a temporary condition. He pointed to the screen, where the hero, gaunt and triumphant, was being hauled to safety. The council fears new ideas. The humans are new ideas. That's what makes them dangerous. His father sighed, the sound weary. Just so. Trin looked back at the glowing screen, the human faces celebrating a victory snatched from the jaws of the void. No, he whispered, a conviction hardening in his soul. That's what makes them necessary. In the grand hall, the centennial gathering was a spectacle of pomp and cemented power. Representatives in their glittering finery represented a galactic order that had not known true crisis for 10 generations. Grand Counselor Mira stood at the central podium, a figure of radiant authority. For a millennium, her voice echoed, the council has been the guarantor of peace, the curator of progressive stability. She paused, allowing the ceremonial silence to deepen. But new winds blow from uncharted space. The species known as humanity, encountered in the outer territories, has, through uncontrolled contact, begun to seed disruptive ideas. Their influence spreads without oversight. Their chaotic modes of thought risk destabilizing carefully balanced systems. A murmur, part anxiety, part intrigue, rippled through the assembly. Vox, seated among the elders, felt a cold dread coalesce in his gut. Therefore, Mira's voice sharpened, cutting through the murmur. This council proposes the containment edict. A quarantine perimeter, Quarantine Zone Alpha, will be established around human access space. All trade, travel, and communication will be routed through council monitors. This protective measure will remain until a full and proper assessment of human societal stability is completed. The representative from Valari rose. Grand Counselor, my people have found profound value in the human exchange. Their art has opened new spiritual pathways. Which is the concern? Mira interrupted smoothly. Unregulated cultural alteration. We must guide such things, not be swept away by them. A mining consortium delegate stood. Human efficiency protocols have boosted our yields by 40%. Short-term gain, Mira countered, against long-term, sustainable models. Their methods are extractive, unpredictable. One by one, she dismantled the nascent defenses of the human-aligned worlds. Her logic was impeccable, her tone one of benevolent concern. To the chamber, she was wisdom incarnate. To Vox, she was a gardener shearing a strange, beautiful, and potentially vital new plant before it could bloom. Finally, Vox rose. The ancient ritual of an elder standing silenced the hall. 6 cycles ago, I warned of this species. Vox's voice was a dry wind through ancient bones. I counseled engagement from a position of strength. That window has closed. To contain them now is not to prune a weed. It is to challenge a vine. You tell them you cannot go here, and you ignite in them a singular, relentless purpose to discover why. You support the edict, then? Mira asked, a faint, mocking smile on her lips. I support wisdom, Vox replied. And wisdom says the only way to mitigate the unpredictable is to bring it into the light. Offer them observer status. Guide them into the fold. A wave of suppressed laughter and disbelief washed through the tears. The idea was absurd to them, like inviting a clever, feral animal to a diplomatic banquet. The elder's passion is noted, Mira said, the dismissal final. We shall proceed to the vote. The result was a foregone conclusion. The containment edict passed with overwhelming majority. Only the delegates from the frontier worlds, their hands already stained with human trade and their minds buzzing with new ideas, stood in silent, powerless opposition. The galaxy had just drawn a line in the cosmic sand, and humanity, inherently terminally curious, was now staring directly at it. 3 standard cycles later, at the newly demarcated edge of Quarantine Zone Alpha, The silence of space was broken by the sleek, menacing forms of 3 Council battle cruisers. The arbiter of law, the sanction of unity, and the pillar of order moved into a triangular blockade formation, their hulls glinting dully in the light of a distant star. They were floating citadels of polished metal and dormant weaponry, symbols of an authority that had not been truly tested in centuries. On the bridge of the Arbiter, Captain Vorlax watched the tactical hologram with serene confidence. Sensor contact, his officer reported. 2 vessels, human design, emerging from quantum drift. Just 2? Vorlax asked, a ripple of amusement in his translated voice. Our intelligence suggested a more spirited response. Perhaps they did not comprehend the seriousness of the edict. Or they comprehend it all too well. His second-in-command, a pragmatic Tarkelian named Jax, mused, and have chosen a different kind of response. Open a channel, Vorlax ordered. Let us educate them. Before the comm officer could comply, the human vessels, designated HSS Defiant and HSS Unyielding on the scanners, did something impossible. Without the flare of conventional thrusters, they seemed to fracture the space around them. One moment they were a unified blip on the screen. The next, they had executed maneuvers that defied standard Newtonian physics, appearing instantly to port and starboard of the Council formation, flanking them perfectly. Evasive pattern gamma, Vorlax barked, his confidence cracking. How are they? Weapons lock, Jax called out, but his voice held confusion, not alarm. Negative, not weapons. They've deployed a cloud of small objects. Hundreds, surrounding us. On the main viewer, the space around the 3 cruisers blossomed with a swarm of tiny, glittering nodes, no larger than a human fist. They arranged themselves into a complex, shimmering lattice, a cage of light and data. They are broadcasting, the sensor officer said, utterly baffled. On every frequency, unencrypted, high-bandwidth data streams. It's information, schematics,
Cultural archive.
philosophical texts, music. The main screen flickered, and the grim, resolute face of Admiral James Reed replaced the starfield. Attention Council vessels. His voice came through, clear and calm, translated flawlessly by their own systems. We are aware of the containment edict. Before you enforce it, we would like to demonstrate the fundamental flaw in its premise. The screen split. One side showed Reed. The other showed a real-time map of the local sector, with dozens of worlds lit up, each receiving the torrent of data from the glittering cloud. These are quantum-linked communication relays, a design inspired by your own beacon technology, but refined. They are currently transmitting the uncensored sum of human knowledge, art, and history to every inhabited world within 50 light-years. You are not just blockading ships, you are attempting to blockade ideas. Vorlax stared, his mind struggling to process this form of warfare. You are in violation of Galactic Council mandate. Cease this transmission immediately. The Council issued a mandate without dialogue, Reed countered, his voice hardening. That is not diplomacy. It is diktat. You now have a choice. You can use your considerable firepower to destroy these unarmed relays. In doing so, you will prove to every watching world that the Council fears free exchange more than it values it. Or you can withdraw and inform your leaders that humanity is ready for a conversation. A real one. Silence hung on the bridge of the Arbiter. Jax looked at Vorlax, his expression bleak. Their weapons were designed to pierce shields and melt hulls. They were useless against this. This was a battle for minds, and the humans had just seized the high ground without firing a single kinetic round. Vorlax's shoulders slumped, the ceremonial armor suddenly feeling like a cage. We will report this to the Council, he said, the words ash in his mouth. Reed gave a single solemn nod. We'll be here. As the 3 mighty cruisers powered down their weapons and turned, slinking back toward Council space in a retreat that felt more catastrophic than any military defeat, Reed allowed the tension to drain from his frame. The first shot in the Cold War had been fired, and it was a symphony. On the Council homeworld, Grand Counselor Mira's fury was a silent, cold nova. She stood in her private sanctum, the captain of the Arbiter trembling before her. 3 of the pride of the core fleet, she enunciated each word with lethal precision, outmaneuvered, humiliated, and turned back by a public broadcasting system? Their technology, their tactics, they were unlike anything in our databases, Captain Vorlax stammered. The relays are still transmitting. Our attempts to jam them only cause them to shift frequencies faster. They adapt. 6 months? Mira whispered, turning to gaze upon her glittering city, a monument to perpetual order. 6 months from discovering we exist to making a mockery of our authority. A part of her, the part not drowned in pride, recognized the terrifying genius of it. They had turned the Council's own strength, its monolithic unity, into a weakness. By broadcasting to all, they made any violent response an admission of tyranny. Perhaps, Vorlax ventured, Elder Vox was not entirely— No, Mira snapped, the word final. I will not capitulate to chaos. Their influence is a psychic virus, and it must be quarantined. Whatever the cost. Her mind was already racing, drafting orders for a full fleet mobilization. A show of force so overwhelming the humans would have no choice but to submit. Her plans were shattered by the urgent, strident chime of her priority comm. This had better be the news that the human fleet has spontaneously combusted. She hissed, activating it. The face of her senior aide was pallid, his frills flattened in distress. Grand Counselor, an emergency pulse from the Deep Space Science vessel Curiosity. A joint mission with human researchers. They are reporting a gravitational anomaly of impossible magnitude. They are claiming it's the Devourer. All the blood seemed to drain from Mira's body, pooling as ice in her feet. The world tilted. That is not possible. It was driven into the intergalactic void. The records, the transmission cut off mid-sentence. We have lost all contact with the Curiosity. For the first time in her long, calculated career, genuine, primal fear gripped Mira's heart. The Devourer was not merely an enemy. It was an extinction event given form, a semi-organic hive mind that had consumed entire stellar nations before the elder races united in a war that had nearly broken them. Its return was a fairy tale of terror, a ghost story to frighten young cadets. Verify, scramble every deep-range sensor we have, and summon Elder Vox. Immediately, the same emergency transmission screamed into the receivers on Trell 9. Admiral Reed played it, the voice of Dr. Anna Lane strained but clinically precise, describing the sensor ghost, a wound in spacetime, a gravitational signature that consumed light and twisted physics. The transmission ended not with a scream, but with a sound like reality itself tearing, then static. The Curiosity is gone, Foster reported, his face grim.
No debris.
No secondary signals. Just nothing. Reed stared at the frozen last frame of Lane's face. She wouldn't panic. If she says it's a threat, it's an existential one. He accessed a sealed data file, gifted by Administrator Ben in a moment of drunken, nostalgic candor. It contained forbidden histories, myths the Council had tried to bury. He found the entry, the Devourer, a hive consciousness of assimilation, preceded by gravitational lensing anomalies and quantum field disruption. It's real, Reed said, the weight of the galaxy settling onto his shoulders. And it's coming. The Council's edict, Foster began, is now the least of our concerns, Reed finished, his command voice filling the room. Recall all ships, every civilian vessel, every freighter, every scout. Mobilize the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd fleets. Full combat readiness. We are no longer fighting for a place at the table. We are fighting for the survival of everyone sitting at it. As alarms blared across the station, Reed looked at the star map, now ominously updated with the last known trajectory of the anomaly. It was a spear aimed at the heart of Council space. And humanity, the unpredictable newcomers, were the only ones who seemed to understand. When a storm of unimaginable power approaches, you don't hide behind brittle walls. You learn to become the lightning point. 1 week later, the frontier agricultural world of Vantis went silent. 5 million souls. No distress call. No final stand. Just a transmission that ended mid-bite, followed by an eerie, perfect quiet. The Council dispatched scout ships. They did not return. 3 days after that, the mining colonies on Proxus were consumed. This time, a single, battered escape pod was recovered. Its sole survivor, a Drathian miner driven insane, babbling about ships of living shadow that drank the light and creatures that walked through solid rock. Panic, a virus more contagious than any human broadcast, erupted. A flood of refugee ships choked the hyperlane routes to the core worlds, carrying tales of an enemy that did not negotiate, did not terrify, simply consumed. The Council fleet mobilized with the majestic, sluggish grace of a behemoth roused from sleep. Their ships were magnificent, gleaming, powerful, and standardized. Each cruiser had the same weapons, the same shield harmonics, the same tactical playbook written 100 years prior. The first major engagement was the Battle of Trell 9. 50 Council vessels faced 3 of the Devourer's world ships, vast, planetoid craft that seemed to be grown rather than built. The Council attacked in flawless, textbook formation. The Devourer's response was not tactical. It was physiological. Organic projectiles that bypassed energy shields. Resonant frequencies that caused Council ship systems to cannibalize themselves. The battle was not a fight. It was a dissection. In under 4 hours, 38 Council ships were reduced to inert, infected husks, dragged into the maws of the world ships. Only 12 managed to retreat. Among the lost was Administrator Ben. His final act was not a martial one, but one of intellect. He hacked into the station sensor net, directing it at the Devourer fleet in its moment of triumph, and broadcast a compressed data burst, every scan, every energy reading, every observed vulnerability, on a tight beam to a human receiver. Then Trell 9, and Ben with it, was swallowed by the dark. Elder Vox stood before the emergency session of the Galactic Council. The Grand Hall was now a cacophonous monument to terror. Delegates shouted, accused, pleaded. The veneer of civilized order had vaporized. Grand Counselor Mira, her silvery skin dull, her composure shattered, banged her ceremonial staff until it cracked. A brittle quiet fell. The situation, she began, her voice hoarse, is catastrophic. The Devourer has eliminated our frontier defenses. It advances toward the core. Our analysts project a timeline of weeks. A Loria representative stood, his photosynthetic frills trembling. What is the defense plan? How will you protect our worlds? The silence that followed was more deafening than the panic. It was the silence of an empire out of answers. Mira looked at her hands, at the cracked staff, at the faces reflecting her own hollow fear. She had no plan. The Council, for all its history, had forgotten how to truly fight. Into that void of despair, Elder Vox stepped forward. The simple movement commanded a deeper, more profound silence. There is one option remaining, Vox said, his ancient voice the only steady sound in the universe. We must ask the humans for help. The uproar was immediate, a reflexive denial from a dying organism. Mira stared at him as if he'd suggested surrender. The humans? They are children. What can their primitive toys do against that when our entire fleet lies in ruins? The humans think differently, Vox replied, as if explaining a fundamental law of physics. We follow procedure. They seek solution. We build perfect, static tools. They improvise with broken ones. We defend what is. They imagine what could be. The Devourer defeats us because it knows our mind, the single, unified Council mind. It has never fought a species that fights as individuals, that embraces chaos as a weapon, that sees every rule as a suggestion. They are unpredictable, dangerous, Mira cried, the argument now feeble. Yes, Vox agreed, his 4 eyes holding hers. And that is the only weapon we have left that the devourer does not understand. Before the debate could spiral further, a messenger sprinted to the dais, whispering urgently. Mira's face, already pale, went ghostly. She raised a shaking hand. "We have received new tactical data," she announced, the words stumbling. "The devourer's advance has accelerated. It is bypassing our secondary defensive clusters. And," she swallowed the truth a bitter pill, "a human fleet has already engaged the lead elements of the devourer forces at the Carillion Nebula. Without our consultation, without our knowledge. An act of war," a hawkish delegate shouted. "No," Mira said, the fight finally leaving her. "Reports from surviving scout probes indicate the humans have destroyed one of the devourer's secondary harvester vessels. It is the first confirmed victory against this enemy since its return. The silence this time was absolute, heavy with the weight of shattered paradigms. Across the vast chamber, representatives of 300 species slowly turned to look at each other. Then at the star chart where a tiny, young, chaotic species had just done the impossible. The truth, humbling and horrifying, settled upon them all. Mira closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them, a leader making her last, best decision. "Open a direct quantum channel to Earth," she commanded, her voice regaining a thread of steel. "Tell Admiral James Reed, the Galactic Council requests no. The Galactic Council requires the assistance of humanity in the war for our collective survival." As the orders were carried out, Elder Vox looked at the starfield projected above them. The storm was no longer gathering. It had made landfall, and the only shelter left was the very chaos they had tried so desperately to contain. Aboard the unified command ship Resurgence, the air hummed with a controlled, desperate energy. Humans worked side by side with Krellian engineers, Valari medtechs, and Tarkelian tactical officers. 3 weeks of brutal rearguard warfare had forged a ragged, desperate alliance. Admiral Reed stood before the master tactical holotank, now shared with council commanders. Elder Vox stood at his shoulder, a living bridge between 2 worlds. "The Devourer's main force will reach the core world defensive perimeter in 4 hours, a council tactical droid stated. "Our models predict a concentrated assault on the primary shield generators here, and here. Standard defense protocol calls for a layered, reinforcing. They'll be expecting that," Reed interrupted, not unkindly. He manipulated the display. "The Devourer learns. It's seen your standard protocol at Trell 9 and Proxys. It will be prepared to counter it." His hands moved again, scattering human ship icons into seemingly random, isolated clusters throughout the star system, away from the main defensive line. "We won't be defending the perimeter." A chorus of translated objections erupted from the council commanders. "You would leave our homeworlds exposed? This is madness. It's misdirection," Reed said. "The Devourer thinks in terms of consuming mass, of overwhelming central defenses. It will target the largest concentration of power, your fleet, gathered in a glorious traditional battle line. Meanwhile, our strike groups will be here, here, and here." He pointed to gravitational eddies, asteroid clusters, the radiation shadows of gas giants. "We attack not the body, but the nervous system. We don't try to stop the avalanche. We collapse the mountain it's sliding down." Elder Vox studied the chaotic deployment. "You are using the system itself as your weapon, and your own fleet as bait." "We're using everything," Reed confirmed, his gaze sweeping the room. "Every captain has autonomous command authority. Their objective is not to hold a line, but to create opportunities. To be unpredictable, illogical, and everywhere at once." On the council homeworld, deep in the bunkers, Grand Counselor Mira moved through throngs of terrified civilians. A young Valerie, Trin, pushed his way to her, flanked by a human liaison officer. "Counselor," Trin said, his voice firm despite his youth. "The human deployment, it's not random. It's a neural network. Each ship is a synaptic node, acting and reacting independently, sharing data instantaneously. They're not forming a wall. They're becoming a brain. The brain of the battlefield." Mira looked from Trin's fervent face to the human officer, who gave a curt nod. She looked back at the tactical display, at the scattering of human lights. Chaos with a purpose. It was the antithesis of everything the Council stood for. It was also their only hope. "Then we must pray," she said quietly, "that this new brain is smarter than the ancient hunger coming to devour us." Aboard the stealth strike vessel Defiance, Dr. Anna Lane secured the final components of the device she and a team of human and council scientists had built in a frenzied, sleepless week. It was not a bomb. It was a concept made manifest, a quantum resonance disruptor. Leah, Ben's former assistant, her green skin etched with new lines of grief and determination, handed her the final isolinear chip. "For Ben," Leah said. "For everyone," Lane replied, slotting the chip home. The device hummed to life, a sound that seemed to vibrate in a dimension just outside of hearing. The battle commenced with a silent, terrible grace. The Devourer's world ships emerged from their non-standard translocation, casting vast, light-eating shadows over the Council homeworld. They found the Council's main fleet arranged in a majestic, glittering defensive hemisphere. They did not find the human ships. Then, from behind moons within asteroid fields, from the coronas of stellar flares, the human strike groups emerged. They attacked not in unison, but in a staccato, dissonant symphony of violence. One group fired salvos of kinetic penetrators. Another released clouds of nano-disassemblers. A third group, in a move that seemed suicidal, rammed at relativistic speeds into the Devourer's escort vessels, their ships overloading their drives in spectacular, sacrificial explosions that tore gaps in the enemy's formation. The Council fleet, on Reed's signal, erupted from its defensive posture and charged into those gaps, their traditional weapons suddenly effective against the disrupted, confused enemy flanks. On the bridge of the resurgence, Reed watched the holotank bloom with light and lost. "Status of Operation Needle? The Defiance has breached the outer hull of the primary world ship," Foster reported, his voice tight. "We've lost signal. And Admiral, we've lost 37 ships. The Endeavor, the Sojourner, the Kratos, all gone." Reed's jaw clenched, the names etching themselves into his soul. "It will be worth it if Lane gets her shot." Suddenly, alarms shrieked. The massive primary world ship, grievously wounded but far from dead, had disengaged from the melee. Its prow, glowing with a sickly, absorbed energy, turned slowly, deliberately, until it pointed directly at the resurgence. "They've identified the command node," Vox stated, the truth cold and simple. "All power to forward shields," Reed ordered. "Evasive pattern theta. All vessels, concentrate fire on that ship." It was too late. The world ship fired. Not a beam, but a projectile, a condensed singularity of corrupted spacetime. It moved through conventional space like a ghost, ignoring shields, phasing through armor. It struck the resurgence amidships. The ship screamed. Lights died. Gravity failed. The hull groaned like a dying beast. On the bridge, emergency lights bathed everything in bloody crimson. Reed pulled himself up from the deck. "Report. Primary drive offline. Life support failing on decks 5 through 20. Hull breach contained, but the singularity anchor is lodged in the engineering spine. It's starting to grow." They weren't just being attacked. They were being infected. Deep within the cancerous anatomy of the primary world ship, Lane's team fought their way through corridors that pulsed with a vile, organic rhythm. The air was thick with spores that tried to latch onto their environmental suits. They reached the central chamber, a vast cathedral of living horror. In its center, suspended in a vat of bubbling neural fluid, was the hive nexus. A brain the size of a city block, glowing with stolen consciousness, connected by thick, pulsing cords to every part of the ship, every vessel in the fleet. Set the charges in the harmonic sequence, Lane ordered, her voice calm in the face of the abomination. We get one chance to disrupt the quantum entanglement field. As they worked, the very walls began to constrict. The devourer had sensed the infection within its own body. Tentacles of biomass lashed out from the shadows. "We're out of time," Leah yelled, fending off a probing tendril with a plasma torch. Lane made the final connection. "Done. Go." Back to the ship. They ran, the chamber convulsing around them. As the airlock of the Defiance sealed behind them, Lane slammed her hand on the remote activator. Within the chamber, the resonance disruptors awoke. They emitted no explosion, no heat. They emitted a perfectly calibrated, counterharmonic vibration that traveled along the quantum threads binding the hive mind. The effect on the battlefield was instantaneous and spectacular. The Devourer fleet, a moment ago a terrifyingly coordinated organism, became a spastic, disorganized mob. Ships collided with each other. Weapons fired wildly into empty space. The world ships themselves shuddered, their trajectories becoming erratic. "It's working!" Foster shouted on the crippled Resurgence's bridge. "The enemy coordination is gone. But the primary world ship, its nexus wounded but its autonomous systems robust, was not finished. It rerouted control to secondary ganglia. Its weapon systems realigned, now targeting the Resurgence with pure, dumb, brute force energy beams. Shields at 8%. Hull integrity failing. Reed knew they had seconds. He made a choice. Transfer all remaining power, all of it, to the forward pulse cannons. Target the site of the Defiance's breach. Admiral, at this range, the feedback will do it. The Resurgence, dying, gave its final breath. 2 lances of pure white energy, fueled by the ship's own dying heart, crossed the void and pierced the wound Lane had created. They penetrated deep into the world ship's core, finding the destabilized nexus. For a moment, nothing. Then, from within, a light brighter than a star. The primary world ship didn't explode. It unfolded, reality itself rebelling against the corrupted mass within it. The other Devourer vessels, their quantum links severed by the disruptor and their primary consciousness truly annihilated, began to break apart, to drift, to die. The battle was over. In a council chamber still scarred by emergency lighting and the ghost of fear, a new gathering convened. The seats were not all filled. The silence was one of mourning, and of dawning, painful respect. Grand Counselor Mira stood. She looked older, the weight of billions lost etched upon her. "The Devourer has been repelled," she announced, the words hollow against the cost. "Thanks to the sacrifice of our own forces and the unprecedented alliance with humanity." She turned to where Admiral Reed stood, his arm in a sling beside Elder Vox. "But the cost is a galaxy forever changed. We have learned that stability is not a fortress, but a dynamic equilibrium. That the unknown is not always to be feared, but sometimes to be embraced." Reed stepped forward. "The Devourer is wounded, not dead. It will return. The universe is vast, and it holds other terrors. We must be ready." "How?" asked the representative from Loria, the question now sincere. "Together," Reed said, "not as a hierarchy but as a network. Your wisdom and history, our adaptability and drive. Your patience, our urgency. You are the memory of the galaxy. We are its immune system. We need each other." Mira nodded. "The Council proposes a new charter, the Galactic Concord. Earth will be a founding member, with a permanent seat on the newly formed Defense and Adaptation Council." She looked at the assembly, at the empty chairs. All in favor? The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. The age of monolithic order was over. A new, more resilient, more chaotic age had begun. Afterward, Elder Vox found Reed at the great observation window, staring at the stars being relit in the aftermath of shadow. "You have achieved the impossible," Vox said. "You did not just defeat an enemy. You changed the nature of the civilization that defeated it." Reed shook his head, watching a human repair pod work alongside a council constructor drone. "The Devourer changed you. We just showed you that you could change too. That flexibility is not weakness. That the random mutation is what allows life to survive the plague. The paradox of humanity," Vox mused, his 4 eyes reflecting the starfield, "is that your danger and your salvation are the same thing. You prepare for the worst possible world, and in doing so, you often create a better one." Reed finally smiled, a tired, genuine thing. "We hope for peace, Elder, but we build for survival. It's what we do." As they stood in silence, the galaxy before them was no longer a map of controlled territories, but a living, breathing, uncertain frontier. The Council had finally listened, on the brink of oblivion, and humanity had found its place, not as rulers or subjects, but as the galaxy's steadfast, unpredictable guardians, the necessary chaos against the eternal, encroaching dark.